Hello, Tansei, bonjour, bonjour. My name is Deandra Thomas Hart. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I am a Cree descendant from Peguis First Nation. I am also, by trade, I'm a filmmaker as well. I've attended CBC New Indigenous Voices program, and so that was really cool. So I signed up for this session. I'm a volunteer facilitator for today, so I'll be reading off our presenter's bio. Sonia is a bilingual Kainkahaga Quebecois filmmaker who has been working for over 15 years at bringing Indigenous content to the screen for viewers of all cultural backgrounds. She first started making documentaries to explore her bicultural heritage and understand the impacts of colonialism. Some of her documentary credits include Last Call Indian, The Oka Legacy, Wapakoni, and the series Skin Indigenous. Sonia has also written and directed 2 feature films, Le Dep, 2015, and The Rustic Oracle in 2019, which was shot in her home community of Gunnesatage. Sonia recently wrote and directed her first drama series, Portois Flora, last year, 2022, which is the first drama series in Canada to be written, produced, and directed entirely by Indigenous content creators. The series won the 2022 Cairns Mipcorn Diversity Award, as well as the award for the best mini-series at the C21 Content London 2022. Help me give her a little round of applause and welcome her to the stage and to present herself more. Thank you.
Nyawa. It's a small crowd and I feel weird being on a microphone for a small crowd. So maybe at some point I'll just come and sit and chat. Well, thank you for being here. I'm here to talk about the series Pour toi, Flora, Dear Flora, but also to talk about the importance of art and media in sharing our stories and reclaiming our stories. Basically, I'm here to talk about narrative sovereignty and the importance of taking our stories, owning them, sharing them with the world in the purpose of healing, but also as a tool of preservation. And this series is a good example of that preservation of story and of language. It's a story of 2 young Anishinaabe children who spend their youth in a residential school in Abitibi, Quebec, and who now struggle with the past and they're trying to make amends. And it was shot in French. It was for Radio-Canada, but we also have a full Anishinaabe-Moan version, and it was just recently sold to CBC. So on CBC Gem, there's also a English subtitled version. The story actually comes from my own personal story. My grandfather went to Shingwak Residential School with all of his siblings. He had 4 sisters. And of course, it had a profound impact on my family and mostly our sense of identity. So my family struggles with feeling like they don't belong within their own community and nation. And I've felt that too my entire life, basically, even though I was born and raised there and still go back and still call it home. And I have people from home sitting right there. But my grandfather, I guess I'm part of the lucky ones in a sense, because my grandfather out of his siblings is actually the only one who chose to move back home. And I'm very fortunate. But his sisters, actually, the process of assimilation worked entirely with his sisters, because after Shingwak, when they graduated, they never came home. They decided to pursue their lives in Toronto or in other cities. And some of them passed away without ever coming home. And when my grandfather passed away and one of his sisters also passed away in the same year, their older sibling, my great aunt Kay, told her son, I need to come home. And he right away knew what that meant. And she was 88 years old and she had never come home to Gunnesatage. And luckily, there was room at the wonderful elders home in my community. And my great aunt Kay got to come home. And she spent the last decade of her life home in Genesadage, and she passed away last year, almost 2 years ago, at the age of 97. So it's never too late to come home. And that was kind of the basis of this story. But I could have done it in English because my grandfather went to an English residential school, but I've been working in television for years now, and I work both in English and in French. And on the Quebec side, on the French side, I often heard from, reporters, politicians, and just general people that residential schools is not something that happened in Quebec. I'm talking a few years ago. I'm not talking recently. I'm talking like 10 years ago. That's what I would hear, that it was in a Western thing, or it wasn't as bad. And that really frustrated me. And I've met so many survivors in the last 15 years with all the different documentaries and work that I've been doing, that I was just angry that some people still thought that. So I said to myself, I need to get this story straight. I need to get history straight. And we need to tell this story in Quebec. So I started writing this series in 2018. And I knew that I couldn't tell the story alone, even though it was based on my family. And so I was fortunate to find a circle of survivors that were willing to help me with the scripts. 2 of them are here right now, actually, and to read the scripts, to share their personal stories, to provide feedback, but also, and most importantly, to guide me in the writing of the series. And there were 3 things that kept coming back in their feedback. They wanted to make sure that the series showed that we were on a healing journey, that it was not only set in the past, that survivors are still alive and they're on a healing journey. The other thing was to make sure that not all religious figures were awful monsters, so to balance it out quite a bit, and also to not show violence gratuitously. So to not re-traumatize survivors who are going to watch it and finally see their story on screen. And that's tricky when you're working with a broadcaster, but who wants, but they were very, very, very respectful. And actually, when we pitched the project to Radio Canada, which is the French CBC, immediately the big boss said, well, it's about time we tell this story. And I said, yes, it is about time. And he said, I've been wanting this story for a long time, but it needed to be the right people. And he even said, there was no way I was going to greenlight this if it wasn't led by Indigenous content creators. And I respected him for holding on to that and not, saying yes to another production company that might not have understood the weight of the story. And so that actually leads me to talking a little bit about narrative sovereignty, which is something that we talk a lot about these days in our industry. Up until probably, let's say, 7 or 8 years ago, 99% of content on our screens, whether it was television or film, 99% of it was directed or written or produced by non-Indigenous people. And that's, for the last 100 years of film and television. And although there are many allies that, did the things the right way, there is also a lot of stereotypes that were on screen that affected the way people obviously view us, but the way we view ourselves. And now the notion of narrative sovereignty is nothing about us without us. So if you want to tell a story, an Indigenous story, you need to have the right partners around you. And even though, this story is very personal to me because of my own family, if I'm going to tell a story that is rooted mostly in an Anishinaabe culture and nation, even though I'm Ganyagihaga, I'm going to surround myself with Anishinaabe people, which is what I did. And so once we went into production, I'm going to show you the trailer soon. And honestly, this is not, so it's not like a plug. I'm not showing you the trailer. So you're like, I'm going to go watch it. I want to express how important it is to collaborate with survivors to give them the opportunity to share their stories. So once we went into production, we actually had to explain to the broadcasters how important it was to make room in our shooting schedule and to make room in our budget for counseling on set all the time, every day, whenever is needed, not just when we're shooting scenes that might be hard, just all the time. We had to hold space and time and money and resources for ceremony when needed. And we had to make sure that the elders that were accompanying us were comfortable at all times. And they were there not only to guide me, but they're also there to, and that's what's the beauty of it, to support the children and the families of the children that were playing in the series. And that's the most beautiful thing. And I'll try not to get emotional because they're here. But Norma and Emilie, who were part of this story from day one, they were on set with us the entire time. And they were there also to help with the language because they speak Anishinaabe and a lot of the children, even though some of them were Anishinaabe, they didn't speak the language. And so they were there to guide them in the language. But they were also there to help us emotionally, which I found incredibly beautiful because they're the survivors. They're the ones that went through the hardships. They're the ones that went through the story that we're telling, and yet they're on set comforting us. And it was very, very, very powerful. And the reason that I bring up the language is these children, the reason why they couldn't speak their language is obviously because their grandparents went to residential school. But the act of learning the language in the series is an act of reclaiming what is theirs ultimately. And once we were done the series and we did a full Anishinaabe version of the series, it's a group of survivors that translated the entire series and did the actual dubbing of their story. So, and it was a very hard and painful process, but it was also a healing process because they were not only saying the words, that are sometimes hard to say, and they were actually working on revitalizing the language because they had to think of structures of sentences that maybe they didn't use on a day-to-day basis. And they had to sit together and think of ways to structure the sentence that would make sense in the dialogue, not to mention that would fit with the time of the timing of it, which is really, really hard and when you're dubbing in film and television. But when we were in that dubbing process, I realized the power of filmmaking as a preservation tool. So those structures and those words that we almost brought back to life in a way, they're now immortalized in this project, and so it becomes like a resource almost now because they have all the documents of the translation and the pronunciation as well. And we had many actors also come in and dub their own voices and they're not first language speakers, and they were learning their language in that process. And when we had our first screening of the first 2 episodes, there's the father of the Wabagoni, the beautiful Saha. He was very, very emotional. And the thing that made him, cry, but there were beautiful tears, was the fact that it was hearing his daughter speak his parents' language. And that's when I realized how powerful what the story is. So it goes beyond just explaining history and reliving trauma. It is about healing because of that, thanks to that, basically. So let's watch the trailer and then we'll chat some more. So just the trailer is emotional. That's why I guess we could have watched a full episode, but I think each person should watch it at their own rhythm at home with their people where they're comfortable. So I didn't want to show a full episode, but I still wanted to show. I think through the trailer we still see and feel the heart of it, and I want to talk a little bit about uh, the importance of seeing ourselves on screen. There's not that many Indigenous actors in Quebec. There's probably barely a handful. And for this series, my casting partner and I went through to so many communities. We basically did like the Quebec powwow trail and met with so many families and so many kids. And a lot of them were like so bubbly, and so you meet with these children and you can see their ability to shine, but it goes beyond that. When you're telling a story of this magnitude and this importance, it's actually having really meaningful conversations with their parents and explaining, the weight of the story, and they become your partners in this production, right? The parents, because when some scenes are hard, you turn to the parent to know when it's time to stop and do something else. So they become the gatekeepers and the safety nets for the kids. And I'm not gonna lie, there were moments where even I, as a director, I was looking at uh, a scene with like 60 children in a chapel, 60, little boys with short hair and little girls with short hair and the matching uniforms. And even I, sometimes my knees would buckle and I'd have to sit down and just process that moment. And I questioned it, I questioned, should we be doing this? Because I'm actually taking all these children and putting them in the situation that I'm trying to denounce, that I'm trying to speak up against. So am I part of the solution, or for these children in that moment, am I triggering something for them, for their parents, because their parents are on set? So that's kind of something that we deal with when we're doing drama and fiction, is always trying to figure out what that line is of the importance of telling the story, but also the importance of how we tell it and what's worth showing and what's worth not showing or explaining it otherwise. And I'll give a small example of how to show it otherwise. We had a scene where there was an act of abuse on a child. And right before we went to shoot the scene, I had the conversation with the child, with the mom, with the other actor, and right before we went to shoot it, I just felt very uncomfortable with the whole situation, and I just thought of another way of showing that same weight of the abuse, and we ended up shooting a closed door with just a bit of light at the bottom of the door, and we heard the priest whisper to someone behind the door, and we just had a slow move towards the door, and that was enough. I didn't have to put a kid in an uncomfortable situation. I didn't have to have them in the same room with this person with, so, and it ended up being one of the most powerful scenes of that episode, because imagining what's going on is worse sometimes than seeing it. So for the audience, it worked. And for me, I felt like I protected my little actors and I didn't put them in a situation that could have been harmful. So there are various moments like that, that you have to put the humans first before the story, which I think, going back to narrative sovereignty, I think sometimes in some instances when the directors or writers or producers don't understand that baggage and are trying to tell a story that is rooted in some form of trauma, or they wouldn't take that into consideration necessarily. So that's another reason why we should reclaim our stories, that so we make sure that we're protecting the people that are taking part of it. The other actors that we found. When you're working with a broadcaster, they want stars on their screens. And I had to kind of fight for the actors that I wanted in those key roles. Luckily, they said yes, and I'm glad, because now a lot of these actors are finding roles in other series and in other films. So it kind of like helped their career, and hopefully that'll lead to having an entire Indigenous French industry, which we don't quite have yet. On the English side, we can often fill our crew with mainly Indigenous crew in all the departments, whether it be camera and art direction. And it's a lot harder to do on the Quebec side, but we're hoping that projects like this, because we imposed on the broadcasters that we would have trainees in the different departments and that they were going to be paid trainees to help create that industry in the future. So that's kind of the gist of it. That's pretty much what I wanted to share. And I know we're supposed to be here for an hour, but I'm hoping that you'll have questions and comments, and that we'll be able to share a bit more on this or on anything. So the floor is open to anyone. And there's a microphone right there. I thought you were going to.
I'm just facilitating. Anybody?
Small room for a
I
microphone.
know it, but it's for the
Whatever.
translators.
That's true. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you for being here too. And I just wanted to do a little comment how I saw the visual arts in this story, in this context, how much it is impactful to everyone. So I think it's important part of the story to bring it home, you know. Sorry, I'm a little nervous talking on this thing. But like we saw the art exhibit yesterday at the McCord Museum was really hard to look at. And today when the lady showed pictures,
Yeah.
I mean, just the visuals brings a whole other aspect to the whole story, which is sometimes even harder than just listening, but I think it's important. So, you know, it's a story that needs to be told. Mm-hmm. And well, thank you for being part of it.
I really believe in the power of film and television, and those are all intertwined now, but the power of specifically drama and fiction, quote unquote fiction, because not, you know what I mean, but storytelling. And I kind of discovered that actually with my first feature that I did, because I've been doing documentaries for a long time. And when you do documentaries and you find your audience, oftentimes your audience is already interested in the subject of your documentary. Like if they're watching that documentary, it's because they're already somewhat interested. But when you make a fictional, like a feature or like a drama, scripted basically content, you're casting a wider net, because some people are just watching it in the hopes of being maybe entertained for, you know, an hour, 2 hours or whatever. But you can still, like, I can still get messages across. I can still say something that's meaningful and important, but I'm reaching them. I'm going for their heart instead of going for their brain. Like with the documentary, you're often going for the brain. And with fiction, you go for the heart, and you find things that people can identify with. Like you build characters that people can identify with, and then they see themselves. And when they see themselves in the other, when they see themselves in these characters, they develop empathy. So when you develop empathy for these characters that on screen, well, you'll turn around in your everyday life and you'll have that empathy for the real people that really lived it. And that's like the power. And I think it translates in visual arts, because it's the emotions, and you can't pretend that those emotions don't influence after how you see people and how you interact with people. And I think that's the beauty of storytelling. It's you're building a bridge with others, you know, whether it's a cultural bridge or just you're building that bridge. And once that empathy is built, you can't break that empathy. It'll stay afterwards. So it's a beautiful, beautiful tool.
Bonjour. Makite Nimke Benese de Gazo. I was talking to youth today about this prior to seeing this clip. And I was talking how important it would be for the youth to get the message out that the survivors have to talk about. And we hear in the talks that the elders gave, the survivors gave, that it was hard for them to talk about the past. And you mentioned that to show something like this would re-traumatize. I believe it's good to be re-traumatized, to shake up that memory, to bring it forth, to make us survivors talk. And it's hurtful, very hurtful for us elders, survivors to talk about it, but it needs to be done. And the youth have the strength and the courage and the wisdom and the support of the survivors, at least on my part, because I'm going to support initiatives like this with youth. Miigwech.
No, that it's you're echoing a lot of the conversations that I've had with Normand and Emilie over the years. Because I always had that tendency of going to see if they were okay, and they would say, well, in French, but they would say, "Ça fait mal, mais ça fait du bien." So it hurts, but it feels good, because they felt that their story was coming alive, and they didn't necessarily have to have every single right word to say it, because there was also visuals and life helping them shape the story. So Nyawa, thank you for sharing that. And I'll just add that when the series aired, I got a lot of messages, you know, through Facebook and Instagram, and I had a lot of messages of younger people. I had a lot of messages of children or grandchildren of survivors, mostly children of survivors, who shared that they finally understood their dad, or they finally understood why their mom was a certain way, or and that for me was like, wow, if the broadcaster doesn't like it, if the non-Indigenous people don't like it, if, the ratings are really crappy, I really don't care. I care about those messages. To me, that was like, I couldn't have asked for something more powerful, just to know that these people that took the time to write, it made them realize something about their parents. And to me, that was like very, very powerful.
Is it on? Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sonia, for coming. I was so glad that you agreed to come to our forum here. Yeah, my son, I showed this to my son and my niece, okay, in Kanisabage. And they asked me, I said, Dad, ask her, what was the reaction of the non-natives, the white people from Quebec, when they saw this this episode? What kind of feedback did you get?
Yeah, no, Jerry, quite positive. And I was surprised because when we had announced that we were making the series, I was reading comments, and you should never read threads. And it was kind of mixed. Like a lot of people were like, anyways, I won't repeat what some people were saying. But then when it aired and people watched it, I got a lot of feedback of people saying, we had no idea, and a lot of people who are saying, how come we didn't learn this? And how come we're not taught this in school? And I was saying, okay, we're getting there. Some schools are now finally incorporating, but Quebec is a little slow on that front. But I felt that even as a society, like the Quebec society is now more and more not only open, but like they want to know, they want to understand, and they want to be part of the solution. Of course, you'll have, you know, your branch of racists that'll stay racist. But in general, honestly, I was quite surprised of the positive response. And a lot of people just outraged and mad and couldn't understand that that actually happened in Quebec. And finally realizing that it's part of our collective history. It's not something that happened elsewhere. It's not someone else's problem. It happened here, and now we need to own it. And I really felt like there's a lot of people that were finally owning it. Yeah. Finally. So now at this parallel to the series, I also wanted, because I'm frustrated that we don't talk about it enough in schools, I wanted to create a tool that schools could use. So we created a virtual reality version, I guess you could say, of this story. It's not quite this story, but basically residential schools, specifically in Quebec. So it's called William, and it has its, I guess, premiere, I guess you can call it, on September 29th at the McCord Museum. And it's basically when you put on the VR helmet or whatever you want to call it, you're living like a young child that is taken from his family and sent to residential school. And it's divided in 6 chapters of this person's life. And our goal is for that project to become a tool in high schools so that students, non-Indigenous students, can somewhat feel, you know, part of that experience and try to, you know, what would have been like if they had to go through that, to a point where we even played with the language. So, you know, the Indian agent and the nuns, you can't understand what they're saying, like they're speaking a language that you don't understand, but by the end of it, you understand them and you don't understand your parents anymore. So just to show like that so I'm hoping that high schools will take it on as a tool, because now they're integrating residential schools as part of their curriculum, but the teachers don't necessarily have the knowledge to actually teach that subject. And not all of them will actually ask for extra resources and ask for elders to come into their class. They'll just go with like the small little paragraph that's in their history book, and that's it. So hopefully tools like that can help build a stronger curriculum so we can share their stories. And Julie right here worked on it with me.
How would you deal with that? Looking after that child.
Yeah.
Here's that trigger, and they think they could end up hurting themselves. How would you address that?
That's actually a really good and very important question. And originally we were aiming for like younger children, and we consulted with family therapists. And je vais répéter rapidement la question. C'est si c'est pour des enfants en âge scolaire, que ce soit autochtone ou non, si l'enfant a vécu des traumatismes lui-même, comment on peut s'assurer de protéger ces enfants-là dans une classe pour le projet de réalité virtuelle qu'on a fait. And we actually, the ages are now, the rating is now 13 plus for certain episodes and 16 plus for certain episodes. That being said, I'm very careful of the way I shoot things. So there's nothing that's extremely graphic. It's all just the environment, which can be scary in itself, of course. But we have an entire booklet with conversation topics beforehand. And we worked with a guidance counselor and a psychologist. And it has actually in the booklet things that the teachers can look out for before to see if there are any triggers just in the conversations that they have. And if children decide not to participate, there's like other activities that they can do. Anyways, we have all of that kind of protocol to protect the kids. And we also have a version for Indigenous students in Indigenous schools, which has its own whole, like, I guess you could say, protocol to make sure that we're protecting the viewers that are watching.
Question about that. Who don't understand the issues very much, and is there funding offered by organizations in Quebec to help teachers integrate this content into curricula, or like who are you aware of folks working on that issue? I work in a really different area, climate and environment, and we see that as well, that there's not very much content on climate change solutions, science, what have you, in high schools. And even when there is, teachers often don't feel comfortable to teach the subject because they either don't know about it, or they don't feel comfortable, or they think it's politicizing. Imagine that's similar with Indigenous issues in residential schools. It's really emotional. It's lots of trauma. It's really difficult. So there's all sorts of similar issues. So I'm wondering, on your end, where if you see like which organizations are working on that to help, because since the TRC, from what I gather, there is more Indigenous education in non-Indigenous schools in Canada. I just trying to figure out like how deep is that engagement. I'm imagining it's kind of shallow, like, and as you say, it's just a little paragraph, but I'm wondering who are the actors and who are the institutions that are trying to help the teachers bring this into the classroom in a bit better way, if you know about that so much.
I do know that there is funding specifically to help teach Indigenous content in schools. And I only know this because oftentimes teachers directly, or even principals, reach out to me and say, hey, can you come in and we'll do this and we'll do that? Or do we have access to this and that? We have a little bit of money that we can spend this way. But I'm not sure all schools use it in the right way. You know, it's up to them. I think there are funds, but I don't know if they necessarily have to explain how they spend it. So I guess if the school doesn't, you know, take the right path and teaching the right things, I guess, I really don't know how that works actually. I just know that a lot of schools, and if they come to me, they must come to other people too, because I'm just like this. I'm just a filmmaker, but oftentimes they'll ask if they can screen something that I've done, or if I can come and speak. And I'm super happy and glad to do it, but I don't know how many schools actually do that.
Fund, is it federal money or provincial money? That
logically, if it's schools, it must be provincial, but I don't know. Maybe they can ask for funds on the side on the federal level, but I'm not sure, sadly.
I had maybe a suggestion. Do you think we can? Oh, there's a question. Yeah. Okay, I'll wait till after.
Sorry. Hi there, I'm Autumn. I'm from Montreal First Nations. I reside in Saskatoon. I'm from the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, and I work with the reconciliation circles in Saskatchewan. And what we do is we try to find resources to educate public. And that's one of the issues we have, is triggering and like triggering people, and like having people go through those feelings of when learning about residential school. So my question is, where can we find, or where can I locate the resources that would go along with your film, with your series?
Can you just repeat the question? I think I missed a word.
Where would I find or locate the resources for that graphic novel, and teacher resources to what to look out for when educating on and with your series?
Yeah, we don't have like the whole booklet for the series. We have it for the VR project, William, and it's being launched in September. So after that, I'll talk to you at the end, because I can forward you all the info of our distributor, I guess you could call her, the girl that's like in charge of going out and going to the schools, and so I'll give you all that info. Okay, cool.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, because we're only launching it now, so we don't even have schools yet that have integrated it in this year's curriculum. We're hoping to get it in for next year, but we're doing a bit of installations and event, I guess, installations, I guess you could call it, in museums and in events. I guess we could have even had one here, and then hoping that it'll go to the schools. But yeah, I'll give you the info.
Hi. I was just wondering, I don't know if you can say, but have you been contacted for other projects? Like, are networks even more interested in doing more projects, bigger projects like this, telling more stories about Indigenous people since you made this? And I watched the whole series and it's amazing. You guys should watch it.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and that's like the most amazing thing that happened, because at first when Radio Canada said yes, there's a part of them that really wanted to tell their story, but I do know that there's a part of them that are like, we have to do this. And, the CRTC got mad at us for not producing Indigenous content, blah, blah, blah. And I think that their expectations were, I don't want to say low, but I think they were just kind of like, oh, it is what it is. And that happens oftentimes with broadcasters that are not APTN, meaning that when we do content, even if it's documentary or youth shows, we often get pushed to the side. It's somewhere on their platform, but they don't invest a lot of money in publicity, marketing, and all that. This series, they marketed like crazy. Like, we had a marketing meeting and I cried. I cried because I was like, I've never had a broadcaster care so much about a project. And to me, it was like, this is a game changer in the way that they view the importance of the content. And afterwards, they're the ones that came back and said, okay, what's next? And I've never had that before, And I said, well, I have an idea, but it's not rooted in history or trauma, and I'm not teaching anyone anything. It's just an Indigenous family with an Indigenous, life, and something happens, and it's this and that, and we're here, and this is a story, and it's like a, intrigue, and they're like, yeah, okay, cool. And it was such a relief to see that there is just interest in our perspective and in this, these people, without it having to be, let's go through history again and let's go through, so that was like, okay, I feel like we're finally getting over that hump of having to lay the foundation of, of our stories. Now we can actually just, and these stories are still obviously super important. And I'm hoping that there's other series that retell and get history right. But we also, as content creators, we just want to be able to share good, meaningful, powerful stories with like strong Indigenous characters on screen. So I think that that's where we are now. And just like a little anecdote, at the very beginning, when we started writing, the broadcaster, because we were a smaller company, they said, well, maybe you need like one of the big boys as a producing partner. You still hold, the whole creative title and everything, but just to help with the production side. And at first we were like, okay, yeah, maybe they're right. Like, we've done 3 features, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same size of budget and all that. So we're like, okay. So we're asking all of these big boys, like the big production companies, and they all turned us down. Oh, sorry, we don't have time, or blah, 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 or this and that. And at the end, we were still doing the work. And then the people at Radio Canada realized, oh, they can do it, And then they said, never mind finding a co-producer. You guys are on a roll. It's fine. Things are, And we ended up doing it, and it went fine, and everything was great. We didn't go bankrupt. We didn't, didn't go over budget, blah, blah, blah. And after, when the series had its like kind of like a world premiere at like Série Mania, and then at Cannes, and then we won Cannes, and then we went to London, and then we won London, all of a sudden these same production companies And these same producers come back and they're like, hi, Sonia and Jason, my partner. You know what? I have this project I was hoping we could collaborate on, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, thank you. And it was such a good feeling to shut them all down, like either in person or by email. I was like, no, thank you. Wish, you know. So that has also changed quite a bit from like us trying to find space, and now there is space, and it's like the other ones are like, ooh, we want in on this, you know. Sorry, I'm kind of diverting from the subject, but yeah. Yeah.
Moi, je parle en français.
Ben, je vais vous répondre en français.
Mais est-ce que tout le monde va comprendre, tu penses?
Ben,
Oui.
ils vont mettre les petits écouteurs.
OK. Tantôt, on parlait des écoles, comment sensibiliser les écoles. Puis, ça fait combien de jours? 3 jours, je suis ici. Puis souvent, j'ai entendu comment ça se fait que nos enfants, ils n'ont pas été, ils ne sont pas au courant. Ben, pas au courant, mais ils ne connaissent pas toute l'histoire des pensionnats. Pourquoi mes parents ils sont devenus violents avec moi, tu sais, tout ça.
Ouais.
Mais je pense qu'avec une chose comme ça, puis qui pourrait aller dans les écoles, pour toutes les... Parce que c'est quelque chose, moi aussi, je suis une survivante. Et je n'ai pas été longtemps. Puis c'était juste assez, moi, je me suis évadée. Une fois, ils m'ont retrouvée, par exemple. Mais je dis ça parce que c'est quand même difficile de parler de ça à nos enfants. Est-ce que tu es d'accord, là, Moni? Et je pense qu'avec un outil comme ça, dans les écoles, les enfants comprendraient qu'est-ce qui s'est passé dans la vie des parents, des grands-parents. Tu sais, c'est un commentaire que je fais, mais en même temps, peut-être une suggestion qui devrait être, ça devrait être pas, oui, obligatoire d'avoir ça dans les écoles. On commence chez les Autochtones, puis après, mais après les Blancs.
Après les Blancs. Après les Blancs.
Non, mais tu sais, il faut que
Ouais.
nos enfants ils connaissent l'histoire.
Ouais.
C'est pas quelque chose qui est facile à raconter. Moi, mes petits-enfants, moi, j'ai 16 petits-enfants, j'ai 3 arrière-petits-enfants puis j'ai des petits-enfants là-dedans qui me posent des questions, puis j'ai pas toujours envie de répondre. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé au pensionnat, grand-maman? Eh my God, il s'est passé beaucoup de choses. Mais tu sais, m'asseoir, faudrait que je m'assoie très longtemps avec eux autres pour qu'ils comprennent. Mais quand j'en dis, ils veulent encore plus et plus comprendre. Ils veulent savoir plein de choses. Mais je ne suis pas capable de tout dire, moi, parce que
Ça devrait pas reposer uniquement sur les épaules des survivants de raconter.
c'est ça.
C'est une responsabilité collective, tu sais, c'est une responsabilité à tous de partager ça, parce que déjà, ce que vous avez vécu, c'est difficile. Déjà, de l'avoir raconté 1, 2, 3, c'est déjà difficile, mais de le raconter à ses enfants et ses petits-enfants, ça rajoute une couche de difficulté.
Puis les arrière-petits-enfants.
Puis ça devrait pas être juste sur vos épaules que ça se sache et que ça se transmette. Donc oui, moi, je crois profondément que des projets comme celui-là, des projets comme William, l'autre projet qu'on fait, ça devrait faire partie du curriculum scolaire, probablement au secondaire, je dirais. Là, primaire, c'est peut-être un peu intense, mais il y a d'autres ressources. Il y a des livres maintenant, tu sais, qui... Mais c'est ça, il faut qu'il y ait un mouvement... parce que mettons, dans les écoles, chaque communauté a le droit de faire ce qu'elle veut avec sa façon d'enseigner et tout, là, dans nos écoles. Mais quand je pense au système provincial, des écoles qui sont non autochtones, ça devrait être obligatoire. Je ne comprends pas pourquoi ça ne l'est pas. Ouais.
Oui, puis je travaille dans une association où il s'est passé encore des choses. Les enfants qui sont disparus à partir des hôpitaux, je travaille là-dedans, puis ça aussi, c'est difficile pour les parents. C'est toujours il est arrivé trop de choses pour ne pas informer nos enfants. de mettre des choses obligatoirement dans les écoles. Je ne sais pas comment on peut faire, mais en tout cas, il faudrait faire quelque chose.
Moi non plus, je ne sais pas comment faire, mais oui, je suis d'accord, il
On
faut faire quelque chose.
On va parler au
On,
ministre.
ouais, on va y aller ensemble, là, puis on va aller cogner à la porte, puis on va faire « Hey, faut que ça change, ça va faire. » Mais aussi, moi, je crois profondément. Oh, maybe je suis correcte si je continue en français, ça va? Sinon, je peux revenir en anglais. Là, mais, moi, je crois profondément, puis ça fait des années que j'y crois, puis j'aimerais ça trouver une façon de mettre ça en place, mais même dans les écoles provinciales, hors communauté, là, les écoles blancs, là, quote unquote, il devrait y avoir, dès le primaire, un cours d'intégration de la nation autochtone sur laquelle réside l'école. C'est-à-dire que si tu es à Montréal, ben forcément, dès le primaire, tu as l'intégration d'un cours de Kanien'kehá:ka ou au moins de culture Kanien'kehá:ka, que ça fasse partie du curriculum. Si tu es à Ottawa, c'est Anishinaabe. Si tu es à Trois-Rivières, c'est Atikamekw. Puis que ça fait juste partie intégrante de la façon qu'ils apprennent dès le jeune âge. Et là, on élèverait là, une génération complète là, de la société qui comprendrait beaucoup mieux. Ça serait comme juste un pont naturel entre nos cultures, puis ça serait plus de la marginalisation de l'un contre l'autre, ça serait juste une intégration des deux façons de voir l'humanité. Je ne comprends pas pourquoi c'est si difficile puis impensable de le faire. Excusez, c'était ma montée de lait politique, là, mais... Ah! Ouais. 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 Puis juste même au niveau de la culture, juste au niveau de... Je sais qu'en Colombie-Britannique, ils font beaucoup plus, tu sais, de l'intégration, mais ici, on a du chemin à faire, là. Sorry, we're just having a conversation here.
Non, je suis en train de dire que ça devrait être une obligation partout, sinon dans le monde, parce qu'il
Ouais.
est arrivé aussi beaucoup de choses. Mais pour parler, pour être capable de faire, d'obliger, je ne sais pas comment faire, là,
Moi non plus.
mais on est en contact avec, moi en tout cas, je suis en contact avec des bonnes personnes qui m'ont demandé, Française, qu'est-ce qu'on pourrait faire? Je suis dans un comité comment je veux dire, un genre de comité, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour les Autochtones?
Mm.
Mais ça, je pense on pourrait essayer de le suggérer des obligations, de
En tout cas,
l'obliger.
si vous avez besoin de moi, je me porte volontaire pour aider.
Oui. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, I guess just for myself, could you maybe recap your conversation quickly for
Oh,
us and the
I'm
note taker?
sorry you have that. I'm sorry. Okay. So what I was saying is I still don't understand why this is not an obligation across the board for all elementary schools that are non-Indigenous to actually integrate culture and knowledge of the nation where the school sits. So basically, if you're in Ottawa, you have an intro to Anishinaabe. If you're in Montreal, you have an intro to Kanien'kehá:ka, and just have that as part of the actual basis of elementary school curriculum. It shouldn't be that hard to do that. So, you know, you just need a little bit of, we need a little bit of willpower on the parts of the government. So I don't know if we'll ever see it, but to me, it would you'd just raise an entire generation of children that grow up with both worldviews and just respect and knowledge for our cultures and nations.
Mais je pense que c'est nous autres à le faire, c'est ce qu'on veut. Il faudrait commencer à que ce soit nous autres qui le fait, puis que ça se répande dans toutes les écoles, universités, toutes les écoles, universités primaires, secondaires. C'est à nous autres à le faire, à demander.
Ouais.
Pas à attendre après les autres.
Non, c'est vrai. C'est juste qu'on va se brûler si on le fait nous individuellement dans chaque
On va le
école.
faire ensemble. On va le faire, on va y
Ouais.
penser.
Oui,
C'est
mais
ça qu'on
vrai.
veut.
Si on veut que les choses changent, il faut être
Oui.
acteur de changement.
Oui, c'est ça. C'est pareil comme la loi des Indiens, là. Faut faut que ça soit nous autres qui le fait. Notre loi à nous autres. Hein? Mhm. C'est vrai, c'est vrai.
C'est vrai. Merci.
Donc,
Lily.
c'est ça que je voulais dire.
Je vais juste rajouter quelque chose qui se passe présentement dans ce qui arrive avec ce qu'on a fait. Là. Ça réveille. Il y a un réveil qui se fait dans toutes les couches au niveau de provincial, même national. Il y a des éléments qui se discutent, pas nécessairement au niveau de l'école. Il y a déjà des universités qui sont intéressées. Je suis invité dans les quelques semaines qui s'en viennent dans le domaine de la santé à voir une nouvelle. Ils veulent me poser des questions pour avoir une nouvelle relation d'intervention avec les Autochtones à Rouyn-Noranda, avec les étudiants et les professeurs, puis les médecins qui sont en étude ils veulent intervenir chez les Autochtones, pas nécessairement chez les non-autochtones. Puis ça, j'ai accepté d'aller participer, puis aller encore épandre la vérité de cette réalité qui n'est pas saine pour améliorer OK, nous autres, on a toujours été, comment qu'on dit ça, là, dans notre résilience, on a toujours accepté de partager quoi que ce soit. On était trop généreux, trop gentils. Mais cette attitude-là qu'on donne, c'est quand ça réveille certaines personnes qui disent hey, ça se peut-tu qu'on ait fait ça, ci, ça, et on veut améliorer avec vous autres, Pasteur. On veut faire des choses qui sont humainement correctes. Je pense que ça commence déjà à s'éparpiller, cette pensée-là. Les professeurs que je vais rencontrer, les futurs médecins que je vais rencontrer, j'espère qu'ils vont faire des pas encore plus importants que qu'on est en train de faire. Là. Nous autres, je suis un survivant, je voulais montrer la vérité en participant à cette série-là. J'en ai eu des émotions, mais c'est pas possible. J'en ai pleuré des nuits, puis on ne va pas dire ça, voyons donc, tu sais, mais c'est la vérité. Puis plusieurs personnes que j'ai rencontrées, quand on leur dit, nous autres, on a participé à cette série-là, pas vrai. Tu sais, il y a plusieurs là, qui ont changé de pensée, on ne va plus à l'église, on ne va plus mettre l'argent dans ces bâtisses-là. En tout cas, c'est ce que j'ai entendu dire par les personnes qui ont été touchées, qui ont vu cette série-là, puis que juste entendre ces choses-là, c'est comme j'ai envie de continuer. Pas toi, Flora, numéro 2, peut-être. Je m'excuse de mon français. I'm sorry. I just want to say something. So there's something going on due to that movie that we made. There's already a kind of a week from many, comment on dit, couches,
Different
level on the population. On a BTB side, there's already kind of a movement starting slowly with the students, with the university. They want me to share how we should take care of this indigenous people, Anishinaabe people, Innu people, Inuit people, a kind of dialogue, a new dialogue they want to put on. And I was surprised to be invited on that. And Kitsuminagan, it's kind of a new start for me. Maybe Flora too, I said.
No, Flora too. Which, not bad, your English, Norm.
5 minutes left.
Oh my God, that went by fast.
Yeah,
And
5
here
more
I was
minutes.
thinking, I don't know, I
I
can't
get a
fill
report
an
back
hour.
right at 4 o'clock, so.
Good année. The big journal. OK. Moi, ce que je constate, là, j'entends, ça parle des mémoires, ce qu'ils ont vécu. Moi-même, je l'ai vécu. Mes frères, mes soeurs qui sont décédés, là. On en parle de plus en plus. Quand j'étais jeune, moi aussi, j'ai été au pensionnat, là, puis j'étais pas un sportif. J'étais le branleux de la gang, là. Je patinais pas vite, je courais pas vite, mais il y avait toujours une course en raquette. Ça, je le rapportais. J'étais le champion. Plus tard, ben, j'ai marché dans la forêt avec. J'ai pas été loin à l'école, comme la plupart du monde. Ça fait que, en marchant dans le bois, là, j'ai vu et entendu des choses laissées par nos ancêtres. Parce que la terre, c'est une mémoire. Les arbres, c'est une mémoire, comme tu as mentionné une feuille, là. C'est très naturel, ça. Et dans les années 87, mon père est mort le 27 novembre 1987. À partir de ce moment-là, j'ai vu la nature changer, le comportement animal changer, le climat changer, les êtres humains changer. J'ai entendu des personnes qui marchaient dans le bois puis ils voyaient des choses. Ils voyaient des personnes qui sont décédées, là. Parce que ce moment-là, c'est des mémoires. Puis en marchant, là, c'est comme si tu enclenches un enregistrement ou un film. Ça, c'est naturel. La mémoire est là. Puis on parle de la mémoire qu'on a vécue, nous autres aussi, là. Imaginez-vous, là, quand les mémoires de nos ancêtres, quand on va voir ça dans la forêt, là, il va falloir le gérer, se préparer. Parce que c'est des outils qui sont là pour nous. Avec le changement qu'il y a eu, là, aujourd'hui, on parle du réchauffement climatique et toutes les affaires, là, mais ce n'est pas vraiment un changement, c'est un cycle. Ça revient comme il y a. Ça a tout rapport avec ce que vous parlez, ce que je dis là, comme le mois de mai, c'est le mois de la maternité, les femmes, l'énergie maternelle. Un jour, il y a quelqu'un qui m'a dit, un esprit, il m'a dit de préparer des chaudières parce que le 1er mai s'en vient. J'ai préparé mes chaudières, mais il n'a pas mouillé le 1er mai. Une autre année, j'ai préparé, il n'a pas mouillé. Une autre année, il n'a pas mouillé. Une autre année. Et à un moment donné, là, un 1er mai, ça s'est mis à mouiller. J'ai ramassé de l'eau. Parce que l'eau du 1er mai, c'est très fort pour la médecine. Ça soigne bien des choses. Puis il faut se nettoyer avec. Puis le mois de mai, là, ça a mouillé en 2017. Puis cette année, le 23, on est en 2023, il a mouillé cette année le 1er mai. Ça veut dire que c'est un cycle de 7 ans probablement, d'après mes calculs. C'est des choses que je ramasse dans mon cheminement. Je n'ai pas toutes les réponses. Et dans le mois de mai aussi, la Lune a complété son cycle de 18 ans. Ça va revenir dans 18 ans. Et le Soleil a complété son cycle de 11 ans aussi, tout dans le mois de mai. Le mois de mai, ben, c'est vraiment l'énergie maternelle. Moi, j'aime pas trop le mot énergie féminin parce qu'il y en a qui font de la politique avec les féministes. J'aime mieux le mot énergie maternelle parce que les femmes sont plus honorables pour les femmes parce que les femmes ils ont 2 sacs médecine alors que les hommes ils en ont juste un. Parce qu'il y a beaucoup de responsabilités, les femmes. Puis tu vois aujourd'hui, les femmes partout, partout. Ils ils travaillent beaucoup. C'est ça qu'il faut les honorer. J'aime, on parle d'énergie, mais il ne faut pas oublier notre mère, la terre qui est vivante. Il y a beaucoup de choses pour nous. Il s'agit juste de marcher dans le bois. Il nous attend. Aude, c'est bien.
Merci. Ma mère est née au mois de mai. Hein, ça doit. Ma mère aussi. Ça me touche. Mais c'est justement la sagesse comme ça que ça prend dans nos écoles.
It is 4 o'clock now, so it's the end of the session. I have to prepare some notes and report back to the main plenary, but please give her a round of applause
no,
for
that's
her
fine.
amazing story.
Nyawa, nyawa go.
Merci.